Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm delighted to be joined by Jens Stoltenberg, the former NATO Secretary General. Mr. Stoltenberg, thank you for joining us. I mean, for the next 6 months, I think markets, security experts, world leaders will try and figure out what Trump 2.0 means for world security, world peace, and, of course, the economy. You've dealt with him in the past, sometimes in a great manner. Sometimes I know it was fraught discussions. What do you think the best way to deal with Mr. Trump is?
I think the best way is to actually address the issues that he raises. And in NATO, we made the decision in 2016 to engage with then the incoming Trump administration. We did so for 4 years, and I had a good working relationship with him. That doesn't mean that we agreed on all issues, but the main message was that European allies had to spend more, and we addressed that. It was a message on China, the consequence for our security, and also on Russian gas. So we decided to engage to address the issues, and I think that's the best way also this time.
I mean, sometimes he uses actually language that is very disparaging. Is that hurtful for relations, or do you have to just look beyond that?
He has a different style, but again, I think we need to focus, and that's what we did and I did, was to focus on the substance. And again, the main message was that it was unfair that the United States paid 3-4% of their GDP on defense, while many other European NATO allies and Canada spent 1 plus something. And this has been a message from many US presidents. It was actually President Obama that forced through the decision in 2014 in NATO to increase defense spending to 2% of GDP. At that time, only 3 allies spent 2% of GDP on defense. This year, 23 allies are spending 2% of GDP on defense. So this has really changed for many reasons, but also because of the clear message from President Trump when he was in office last time.
How worried are you about Ukraine? The fact that they may not get enough funds, they may not get enough weapons, but also that there is always a risk that Donald Trump sides with Russia.
So we all want this war to end. At the same time, we know that the quickest way to end the war is to lose a war. But that will not bring peace. That will bring occupation of Ukraine. And it will make the whole world more dangerous, because the message then to President Putin, but also to other authoritarian leaders, is that when they use force, when they invade another country, they get what they want. So it's in our security interest to ensure that Ukraine prevails. So the challenge is to end the war in a way that doesn't lead to occupation, but to end the war in a way where Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation. At some stage, there has to be some kind of political negotiated solution, but we know what happens around the negotiating table is so closely linked to the strength on the battlefield. So if we want a negotiated solution to the war where Ukraine prevails as a democratic state in Europe, then we need to provide military support to Ukraine.
But so what does that look like, that solution? And is there a danger that the U.S. actually, manages to cobble something together, some kind of agreement, without the guarantee from the U.S. side of Ukraine's sovereignty?
Well, it's for the Ukrainians to decide what would be acceptable solution. But there has to be at least 2 elements. One is a line agreed. But second, when such a line is agreed, then we need to ensure that actually it stops there. Because we have agreed, or the Ukrainians have agreed lines with Russia before. When they annexed Crimea back in 2014, we had something called Minsk I. There was a line, then Russia violated that, and we got Minsk II, a line further west. And then the Russians waited for 7 years and invaded full-scale Ukraine. So we cannot have what I call Minsk III, yet another line which is not respected. So when a line is agreed, we need some kind of guarantee that Russia doesn't continue after reorganizing their troops, and therefore we need either to arm the Ukrainians so they can deter future aggression themselves, and or some kind of security guarantees, and NATO membership is of course the ultimate security guarantee for Ukraine.
But Mr. Stoltenberg, do you think we're closer to an agreement, or are we closer to peace under President Trump, or are we further away from peace?
I'm certain that President Trump and his administration would like to find a way to end this war. And of course, my message will be that they have to find a way to end the war which respects the sovereignty and the interest of Ukraine. That is also in our interest. Second, when I worked with President Trump last time he was president, then I remember that actually he made and his administration made an important decision to start to deliver lethal aid to Ukraine, weapons to Ukraine. That was not NATO policy up till then. And in 2017 or 18, the decision was taken to start to deliver, for instance, javelins, the anti-tank weapons that proved so extremely important. So. The message is we need to strengthen Ukraine to enable a negotiated peaceful solution. I don't think we can change Putin's mind. His aim is to control Ukraine, but I think we can change his calculus that the price he pays for controlling Ukraine is too high, so he has to accept something where Ukraine prevails.
I mean, there are about 10,000 North Korean troops invited by Russia at the Ukrainian border. What do you make of that?
It demonstrates that security is not longer regional, security is global. As the former Japanese Prime Minister Kishida said, what happens in Ukraine today can happen in Asia tomorrow. And we see how Iran, North Korea, but also China are in different ways supporting Russia. Yeah. Iran with missiles, drones, North Korea with ammunition, enormous amounts of ammunition, but also soldiers. So it demonstrates that we need to have a global perspective of what happens in Ukraine. It matters for global security, and therefore it makes it even more important to support Ukraine.
I mean, whether people like or don't like Donald Trump, he's certainly more unpredictable than a certain other administration. Does that make the world safer? Because people without the rule of law will be more careful in challenging the U.S., or does it make it less safe?
I will be careful speculating too much before we have seen actually what the new incoming administration will do. Again, I think that NATO allies, other partners around the world have to sit down and engage with the new administration and actually address the issues they are concerned about. That's the way we work in NATO, have worked for many years. And if you're concerned about climate or trade or security, sit down, discuss those issues, and sometimes there are actually issues that we can solve together.
Mr. Stoltenberg, thank you so much for joining us. That was Jens Stoltenberg, the former NATO Secretary General, with some very powerful words about how world leaders should actually deal with Donald Trump going forward.